Okay, Kira, thank you so much for being a guest. We're so excited to have you today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited just to meet you and be here.
Yeah. Well, let's just dive into it. Let's start off with giving the listeners a little bit of a background of what first inspired you to pursue a career in HR transformation and consulting.
Yeah, so I've always been focused, I would say, on three things. So I
Hmm.
love problem solving. I
Okay.
also love, like, even as a kid, shiny objects. What's that new thing? So I would equate that to technology today, and then people. So HR transformation is actually like the perfect intersection of all three.
Mm.
My first job coming out of college was at a company called Athena Health. So they're a healthcare technology company. And my role was really to help integrate our platform with all the other systems that are used inside a doctor's office so that patient data can move seamlessly between all of them.
Mm.
Every like single client that we brought on actually required custom integrations. So we had a really big backlog of work. So you can picture like every time a new contract is signed, there's a bunch of integrations that need to be built so that they can actually go live with the platform.
Hmm.
And so that really pushed us to rethink our functional operating model. We ultimately decided to partner with vendor teams in India. So I built a 3-week training curriculum and then went over to Mumbai and Chennai a number of times to onboard our large teams there. And that
Hmm.
experience, like, completely energized me. I loved not only improving our work quality and our speed, but really reshaping our organizational capabilities. So, who is doing what work and where in the world is that work being delivered? So it helped us get better outcomes for the business because we were actually able to churn through our backlog and get clients live on their integrations faster. So that improved workflows for the customer because they're getting off of paper, and manual processes and able to have things be digital. It also improves the patient experience too. So I loved doing that. And then especially having a global team was really exciting. And
Mm.
as I was doing that, I was like, wow, this is the type of thing that I want to do all the time versus the original integration work that I had been doing.
Yeah.
So there's a name for, problem solving, and it's consulting. So
Right.
that was the point that I came over to Accenture. And I think given my experience with changing how our workforce within my particular integration department was operating and the types of ways we were serving clients, that's how I landed in Accenture's talent and organization practice, which is really what we call our human capital side of the business. So anything to do with a client's talent is what we specialize in. Um, and really everything we do comes back to helping, our clients unlock the potential of their people. And
Mm.
talent, in my opinion, is the most valuable asset of a business because you could have great
Yeah.
technology, you could have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the right people and the right skills, you're going to have a hard time,
Right.
achieving your strategy.
Yeah. So would you say that that's what HR transformation really means? Is the people, or how would you kind of, in a nutshell, explain that? So when we dive into this deeper today, listeners will understand. Yeah.
So HR transformation, I think, can sound a little abstract because,
Hmm.
what does that actually mean? But I think at its core, it's very simple. It is reinventing how an organization attracts, develops, supports, and empowers its people so that they perform at their best and the business does as
Mm.
well. Because if you think
Yeah.
about HR, it is the function that enables people to work. And
Yeah.
it's a really, really critical thing to get right.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges organizations face when it comes to trying to modernize their HR functions?
Yeah. So I think first, organizations underestimate the complexity of their current processes. Even if you've got things laid out and diagrammed,
Yeah.
there's definitely a disconnect between what's on paper and what actually is taking place. And so when you try to modernize, what's really, really hard is to dismantle the way things are being done today. It may be supported by your old system, but you can't just take what you have today in your, like, legacy HCM system and put it into a new shiny HCM system and expect things to be different if you don't actually, redesign the way that work is being delivered. So I think that that is probably the first thing because if you don't do the work to change, you're just continuing your complexity in a different system.
Hmm.
That's probably number one. And I
Yeah.
think number two, there is a capability gap. So when we think about modern HR, it is enabled by digital capabilities. There's real time data and analytics, and it's increasingly automation and AI enabled. So the
Hmm.
HR teams themselves are really strong today in relationship management, operational discipline, but they also have to grow the skills to live in a more digital ecosystem. So data
Mm.
fluency, product management, experience design. How do they manage, desk side applications to help with automations, things like that. So HR is responsible for upskilling the enterprise workforce, but as they modernize, they also have to upskill themselves. So it's a really interesting
Wow.
mandate of like, we need to lead the business because to get them upskilled, we also need to upskill ourselves to make the most of, the data that we have.
That's so complex, right? I mean, I mean, maybe I'm understanding wrong, but that just dives into so many different areas and so many different
Mm-hmm.
things. So I'm sure it's like a lot, right? And so I guess many, well, here, I've got a question for you. Let me make sure it makes sense now. But many executives struggle with leading through transformation, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So what qualities or mindsets do you think set apart the leaders who can handle that change effectively? Because that seems like you're diving into a lot of different areas. There's a lot of change, a lot of modernization going on right now.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to say three things. The
Okay.
first is leaders who are able to lead through change have what we would call a reinvention mindset. So they don't
Mm.
assume that what worked a few years ago is going to work again today. So kind of that like what got you here will not get you there
Yeah.
mentality. They are constantly learning, they are asking questions, and they are really challenging assumptions. Like, how can we be doing this differently?
Yeah.
And so I think that they see reinvention as part of their job is to continually evolve. So you need to have, as a leader, that growth mindset so that you're curious and you're willing to continually do things differently and better, even before the circumstances might force you to do so. And I think that's hard. It requires humility. You have to be able to admit that you might need to pivot and adjust as things, move forward. And just really
Yeah.
having curiosity to not defend the way that you're doing things, but instead be, inquisitive about how you might do things in a new way moving forward and kind of design the future. So that's number
Yeah.
one, which is big.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think number two is a little bit simpler. They have a really clear vision and they are able to share that with their organization. So if you can align, behind a shared North Star, I think that that's actually one of the most powerful things a leader can do because you have a clear picture that people can move towards. So it's not just saying like, oh, this is going to change. Here's our today. Here's our tomorrow, but
Hmm.
being able to articulate why that matters and then also how it connects to the work that people are doing every day is huge.
Mm.
So if you are able to repeat that vision consistently, it might be in town halls, but it could also be in one-on-ones. Like, how do you make that a language that people can see themselves in and start to embrace in the day to day? So that's
Yeah.
number two. And then
Hmm.
number three, I would say, is leading with both data and people centricity. And I want to break that down because that doesn't really roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
But as you're communicating and aligning people, like I was just saying, you still have to be human centered. So to the degree that you can use data insights to listen to people, like what is the feedback you're getting from your organization? What does the data tell you if you're running surveys or sentiment analysis about how they feel about this change and responding to that is really key because you need to meet people where they are at. So if you're able to, tweak like how your vision is landing, understand where people are energized and maybe where they need more clarity and support, that is how you actually create the alignment, as you go against the vision. And that'll
Yeah.
help the whole organization move forward together. So I think it's those three things. Like, do you have the growth reinvention mindset? Are you working toward a clear vision? And then are you using insights to inform how you can show up for your people along the way?
Mhm.
Acknowledging where the journey's hard and then, celebrating the wins where you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're very put together. These answers are awesome. And so I'm curious, what what would be the do you not well, not what would be, but do you see a pushback on people being adjustable and flexible for that change? I mean, if you have the vision, if you have all three, yeah, that I can see that leader doing it. But if you're coming in and then consulting and telling somebody, hey, this might be a good way to change, is it kind of the hard to teach an old dog new tricks type thing where they're like, no, this has worked, this is what we're going to stick with?
Absolutely. I think
Okay.
something we definitely try to do a lot is you identify who your change champions are. So who are the people that can actually help bring others on board? They might have social capital within the organization. They might have an official leadership role. Sometimes they don't, but they're the people
Yeah.
who can actually help bring others on board. Because
Mm.
sometimes the executive who might be charged with leading a transformation actually doesn't have that DNA themselves. And you kind of have to be scrappy about where you find it in the
Yeah.
organization. But yeah, it can be tricky and it can definitely be a blocker sometimes if the person who is sponsoring an initiative isn't fully in the boat themselves because people pick up on that.
Right.
Humans are so sharp at identifying authenticity and inauthenticity, and
Hmm.
so that's definitely something that is hard to get right. And if you have
Yeah.
the wrong person in the wrong role, it can really delay or entirely stop transformational programs in their tracks. Honestly.
Right. Right. Well, I hope people are listening, and I hope people, when they listen to this, because it's not live, but when they come back and listen to it, that they replay those three things, because I think those are huge. And the next question I have is kind of related to it, because
Mhm.
when you're working with executive teams, I'm sure it's common that there's some blind spots,
Oh yeah.
right? And those might be some blind spots, but when you see it comes to, well, I guess you see when it comes to the workforce strategy or HR roles, like what's the business outcomes? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so I think in terms of some like blind spots and just things that we see as blockers a lot, first, it's easy I think for other functions to
Hmm.
underestimate how central your workforce and your talent strategy is to your business strategy. Like I said earlier, right? You could have the best idea, you could have the best IP, the best technology, the amazing balance sheet, revenue like that you don't even know what to do with. If you do not have the right people in the right place, none of that is going to make a difference. So
Hmm.
I think for leaders, making sure that the people implications are built in from the start when you're thinking about your strategy is really, really important. So that's what I would say is like
Yeah.
the first thing that we recommend to kind of solve for that blind spot is like your workforce strategy is part of your business strategy. They shouldn't sit as two separate things.
Mm.
The other thing, this has started to change, I think, in recent years, because we certainly help a lot of companies go through these transformations. But the old school way of thinking is that talent is like in jobs and roles, and it's all about, what does the job description on your resume say and, the titles. But
Hmm.
actually, it needs to be around the skills because that is the more granular breakdown of what a person is capable of doing.
Hmm.
So I think the degree to which organizations can move to be more skill based in terms of tracking that as data and building analytics on it, you are better able to forecast your workforce needs and do strategic planning. You can reskill people, so you can make your talent more mobile from one area of the business or one geography to another area, another product line, something like that.
Yeah.
And it just helps you better deploy your talent. So instead of like losing them as attrition, you can have some strong performers that you're like, hey, they've actually got these great skills that they learned over, in product management that we want to move over here into HR because they're pivoting their operating model to be more product focused, right? Like
Right.
that's, I think, really valuable. And it's hard to do without the underlying skills data. So thinking of
Yeah.
that as an asset is big. And
Mm.
then I think the other thing that's tricky is
Yeah.
oftentimes the business just undervalues HR as a strategic partner, and it's seen as like
Mm.
a back office service function, which again is just a more outdated way of thinking.
Yeah.
But it really is an engine and it shapes culture and capability and organizational performance. So if you are bringing in HR later, you're not letting them help design the workforce, the operating model, and the employee experience that will drive the best business outcomes. So, what we think of as organizations who get this right are executives that treat workforce strategy as like a lever that they pull to accelerate their business, and it's not an afterthought.
Yeah.
Kind of gets back to my first point of like making sure that your talent strategy is linked to your business strategy.
Yeah.
I think those are kind of the three big things that we see as like shifts that have to happen to elevating HR's role in the business and making sure that they have a seat at the table.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can imagine it makes sense to have it implemented at the beginning so that when you can grow, it's kind of like the thought of you can build a tower really quickly, or you can build a really nice foundation and make a huge, strong structure. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. And I'm assuming with AI. I mean,
Oh,
I'm sure you get reels all the time if you have social media at all, where,
yep.
it's a joke that the company, a new startup or whatever, will only have an AI HR team or whatever it
Yeah.
is. So let's talk about, because I think the human touch and what HR does is huge and really
Yes.
impactful. And
Yep.
there's a role that it can have that's beneficial, and there's a role that won't be. So what excites you about AI and the human potential aspect, that combination?
That's a good question. And it's such a buzzword right now, just AI in general.
Yeah,
And any
it is.
conjugation, I think it wouldn't be a podcast if we weren't mentioning it. So I'm glad we're here.
Yeah.
For me, the magic of it, and it's not just Gen AI at this point, there's agentic AI, and there's like so many other, models that are coming out, feels like
Mhm.
every day. But
Yeah.
the magic is that it frees us up to be more human. So we can be more creative, more connected, more empathetic, and more capable of doing the work that actually lights us up because AI can help us take on the tasks that drain time and energy, things that
Mm,
feel really transactional. So is it like drafting job descriptions? AI is great at that. It's tireless, it can work very quickly, and that's actually something that is relatively, we would say codified, right? Like you can have a template, you can say these are the skills that we believe align to this job. You can have an AI agent do that very quickly, and then the human is reviewing it versus me spending half a business day writing it. So
right.
all of that, if we're using AI to summarize feedback and help automate
Mhm.
workflows, that enables us to focus on what we are great at, and it actually
Yeah.
helps us redesign work itself. So when you think about work, it's the work that's being done, but it's also your workforce. So who is doing the work? And in the future, it's going to be humans and AI together, right?
Right.
And then the third thing is reinventing the work bench, which is all the tools that you use to actually get work done. So
Mm.
I think that that is what we're unlocking is a real rethink of how we do things day to day, which is awesome. And we should be playing to the strengths of humans, and we can play to the strengths of AI. And that's how we actually meet in the middle. But it should never be like what the reels are saying, that there's just AI for HR and there's
Yeah.
no people involved. I don't think that that makes sense. And that wouldn't be a great experience for anybody
Yeah.
at the end of
Yeah,
the day.
I 100% agree. Usually those reels I'm just laughing at it because
Right.
I think it's funny, right?
Yep.
And I don't know, I think it's such an interesting topic. I mean AI it is talked about a lot, but I think
All the
in
time.
HR it's such a, if you talk about AI with our business, right? I mean it's really important that we don't just use AI for writing all the resumes and for,
Right.
doing all the branding, everything that we do. The human touch is good. But with HR, it's like a whole nother level, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
because you can really use
Yeah.
it to accelerate, save time. And I feel like if you have more energy, then you're going to be able to help the organization a lot more too. If you're able to save
Right.
time, save areas, that you
Yeah.
don't have to have all of that human touch that it needs to be.
Right. And can you shift from being more reactive to being more proactive
Right.
because you're not stuck doing transactional work or just like answering the mail on things? Like, what does that keep the lights on stuff that can be done in the background? That, yes,
Mhm.
humans should be, we say either humans are in the loop or humans are in the lead, right? Like, you're not just having AI do things without, any checks and balances. But there is a lot that they can do, especially if it's something that is in a system that's in a process flow. Let's say you can write that into the programming for an agentic solution, and it can go do that
Yeah.
work for you. And then, like, say you've got the time to sit to look at, surface analytics and be like, gee, we need to have a conversation with the business about this, skill gap that we're seeing emerge and how we solve for that. And like, oh, we've got to do a ton of hiring for the holidays because we're expecting a massive influx of business based on this new promotion we rolled out. Whatever the thing
Right.
is, there's a lot more room for that like strategic thinking and partnership that again will get HR more of a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And it lowers the cost to serve, right? HR is always a function that is asked to do more with less. So this is
Yeah.
really a big boost to achieving that objective, and still being lean, but actually incredibly effective with the way that you serve the rest of the enterprise.
Yeah. I'm sure that's so true with the HR being asked to do more with less. Because I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at what you were talking about with what you guys cover, what you do, all the different areas that you have to hit on, that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff, right? That could
Oh
be
yeah.
multiple different, I know it's multiple roles within HR and things like that, but there's a lot of different experience, expertise, focuses you have to have. And so if you
Yeah.
can, offload a little bit of that, what a benefit. That's so awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit. We could stay on
Sure.
topic a little bit, but I'm curious what advice you'd give to executives who are currently going through a large transformation, and they're wanting to keep their teams motivated and engaged. What would you
Totally.
suggest for them?
Okay. And I know this is not going to come naturally to everybody because people show up at work in a lot of different ways, but
Yeah.
my personal favorite leaders and my biggest advice would be to lead like a human first versus an executive first. And what I mean by that is people don't need you to be perfect. What they need you to do is be present and show up. So understanding maybe where your teams are in a transformation and where you are, and sometimes sharing, change can feel overwhelming, and being willing to just show a bit of that vulnerability that you might not have all the answers and you're navigating uncertainty too, it really helps signal to everyone that they are not alone and that you guys are going through this as a unit, which I think is really helpful. And the way to do that, like, and put it in practice, is really communicating more than you think you need to.
Mm.
Even like, say, if you don't know everything, you don't have all the answers, but sharing the things that you do know and what you're still working through really just helps build trust. So that
Yeah.
would actually be my first big piece of advice. Because if you think about it, just as yourself, if there's a lot that you don't know and there's a lot you can't see, it creates anxiety because you're
Mhm.
worried about something that you can't really piece together yet because there's so much that you're not seeing. So helping people see and talking to them is going to just alleviate some of that sort of overwhelm and the anxiety that comes with massive amounts of change. And the other thing I would say that's important is you have to celebrate. I said it earlier, but like,
Yeah.
what are the little wins? What are the things that people are getting right? Remind people that you are making progress along the way. A transformation is not just like a switch that you flip. It is a journey. It is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes.
And if you think about a marathon, there's people handing out water like every so often, and there's people
Right.
cheering for you along the way. And like, I think that a lot less people would run 26.2 miles if those things weren't true. And I think it applies here as well. Like, how are you bringing the team along and making them feel like we are moving against our ultimate goals? Especially for a transformation that might take a couple years. This isn't stuff that
Right.
is like, oh, it's in 90 days. Some transformations happen like that, but I think the big ones are, you're talking 18, 24, 36 plus months.
Yeah.
So that really helps when people feel like they're supported and they're seen, and then they are connected into that overarching vision that you guys are all driving for.
Right. Right. Okay. So there's so many things I want to talk about. Oh, there's two things. Two things, right? So first of all, I think it's really interesting. I love how on our podcast, some of the best advice seems like it could be so simple, but people skip over it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, this
Approaching
is
with the
not a
human
secret
side
sauce.
first. Right, right. But
Yeah.
like with if you talk about when you're talking about, approach it at the human side first, you'd think that's what people would do. But it's really easy to go away from that and not realize what you're doing. It's a blind spot a lot of times for people, right?
Yep.
And so I think that's so interesting. But then also celebrating the wins. Like that you would like it if people celebrated your wins, but when it comes to other people, it's an active effort. Have you ever I have a coach that I work with on our business development side, and the gap in the gain. Have you ever heard of that with the diagram?
I
There's
don't know.
it's really interesting. I just barely was learning about it yesterday. I'm sure we both heard about it in the past,
Yep.
but I think there's a book about it. Maybe I just sound really dumb right now, but I'm looking at the diagram, and the whole idea is you have where you start, you have what you actually
Yes.
achieved, and then you have
Yep.
your ideal, right? And with that
Yep.
transformation like you're talking about, there's the
Yes.
ideal of where the company's going to be at. But if you measure
Mm-hmm.
success from what you achieved versus the ideal, you're never going to be able to celebrate,
Right.
right? Unless I mean, maybe this is a pessimistic view, but most people don't hit every single goal that they set, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
most things like that. But if you can measure the success from where you start to what you achieve, you
Yes.
can find those points to where you can help the team know, hey, this is what you're seeing success in. Does that
100%.
resonate? Or am I
Yes.
just totally off? Okay.
No, it does. And I mean, it's as similar to me as like, to use another athletic example, I guess,
Yeah.
working out for 10 minutes is still better than working out for no minutes.
Yeah.
And it's again, like maybe letting, you know, what is it? The phrase, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good.
I
Like,
like
just
that.
because you're not hitting that top bar doesn't mean you didn't still do something that was significant and good.
Yeah.
And businesses pivot and change all the time. So the goal that you originally started out with may not be the one that you're aiming for a year later because it may have shifted a little to the left or to the right. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think being able to measure how far you've come is a great way to think about it versus just like, oh, here's the stuff that we didn't get to, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so easy. It happens all the time. We're talking about like athletic or working out. I competed in, have you heard of High Rocks? I competed in a High
Yes.
Rocks event this
It's
last
such a
weekend.
thing right now.
It's so big.
Yeah.
Anyways, long story short, for people on the podcast, hopefully this doesn't go off too on a tangent, but I didn't prepare for it. Somebody tore their MCL,
Okay.
and I had 2 weeks
Wow.
notice that I was going to go to perform this High Rocks. But my partner, such a good guy. He's an entrepreneur, working, doing all this stuff. He's just lost
Good.
70 pounds. He's worked
Wow.
so hard, and he was so ready for this event. And it's so easy to compare.
Yeah.
He was right on track with what he wanted to do and what we wanted to compete at with doubles. But
Mhm.
it's so easy to compare and get in your head of,
Yeah.
hey, I'm not where everybody else is. Because if you go to those events, I mean, there's guys and girls that are just no body fat. They're just a
Right.
muscle unit
Yeah.
that they're amazing. Good for them. But it's really easy
Yep.
to compare the ideal with what you achieved instead of with where you
Right.
started. Right. And so I think
100%.
that's such a good thing to keep in mind. My wife and I are talking about it with our kids too, of, how can we teach that and implement that? I just think this is so relevant
It
for
is.
every aspect of life.
It is. And I think if you hold yourself to the perfect standard, and I'll be honest, I'm like this too, you'll never get started because you don't let yourself believe that you're good enough now because you're
Hmm.
like, oh, but I'm not at that standard that I've set. And it's like one step at a time. You just gotta one foot in front of the other. And that's how you get
Right.
there. And I think even for your high rocks example, like you still did something that was amazing by showing up and allowing that guy to compete in that
Hmm.
competition because he needed somebody because there was an
Yeah.
ACL injury, right? Like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
you hadn't been training for X number of months to get there, but like for the two of you to still be able to show up and do that competition is a huge win.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you could look at it glass half full or glass half empty. And I usually choose to look at it half full and that we still did it. And hopefully you had a good time.
Right. No, it was awesome. It was great. And I think it's now looking back at it with that diagram that I was talking about, I think it's awesome. But I've loved these topics. Kira, I'd love to have you on again. I mean, those are the questions
Would
that
be
I
happy
prepared
to.
for you. I hope people realize, if anything, the importance of what you do from this
Yeah.
podcast and see the benefits of what you do for organizations. And
Thank
so
you.
what's the best way for people to follow along to see what you are doing at Accenture and what Accenture's doing,
Yeah.
just so they can stay in the loop?
So it's a funny question because most of my work lives in like PowerPoint documents that are on Microsoft's team sites within Accenture, but
Yeah.
I don't have a lot on the broader internet. But feel free to add me on LinkedIn or send me a message. I'm fairly responsive there. And in terms of Accenture, I mean, you can follow us on LinkedIn. We have a great marketing team, so we're always putting out new thought leadership. So you can either find that on LinkedIn or through our website.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, stay tuned. I mean, maybe being on a podcast will make me want to publish more things to the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're great on it, so good for
Thank
you.
you.
And
This was so fun.
yeah, if you are okay with it, we'll put those links, your LinkedIn and the
Yeah,
company LinkedIn or website,
absolutely.
on here for people to just click below.
Of course.
But thank you so much, Kira. We appreciate it, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.